The days of living with one overhead light, they're long gone. Track lighting, recess lighting, decorative lighting, the options are endless. But where do you begin? Here to enlighten us is Randall Whitehead. He's a lighting designer and owner of the company that bears his name, and he's joining us from San Francisco today. Randall, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me on the show.
You know, I'm very excited about this segment. We've been talking about it. We've got a ton of great pictures to show. So I want to tell people before we get started, we're going to be showing a number of before and after pictures so you can get a sense of just the difference, the big difference that lighting can make. So, Randall, let's start with this. You know, people spend a ton of money, thousands of dollars every day on furniture and on art to put in their house. They never think about lighting.
Sometimes it's the last thing that they think about on a project, and often it's the first thing that gets cut from the budget. And lighting shows off everything else that you've done.
Tell us, what are the big mistakes that people typically make when they're putting lighting in and not really thinking it through?
Well, I think you mentioned it before. It's thinking that there's one fixture that's going to answer all of your lighting needs. Actually, light performs 4 functions in any space, and it's layering different types of lighting together can create the best design.
What do you mean 4 functions? Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah. So we have decorative fixtures. Decorative fixtures are what we all grew up with: the chandelier over the dining room table, the lanterns on either side of the front door. They are supposed to create the sparkle for the space. You're not trying to read by a chandelier. If you crank it up so brightly, it becomes sort of this supernova of illumination and takes over everything else. You want it just to create a little bit of ambiance for the space.
What do you mean by ambient lighting?
When we talk about ambient lighting, or ambient lighting is really the term, depending on where you're from.
Tomato, tomato.
That's right. Think about light that's bounced off of the ceiling. What ambient light does is it softens the shadows on people's faces so that you look young, rested, and you feel welcomed into a space.
Of course, we need that all the time, actually,
That's
Randall.
Right.
So, big mistakes people make, though, in the bathroom, in the closets. How do we go wrong?
Well, I think the biggest mistakes do happen in the bathroom. You'll see so often it's the one light over the mirror, or even worse, a recess fixture over the mirror, and it creates really hard shadows underneath the eyes, underneath the nose, like you're holding a flashlight over your head. It makes it very difficult to shave or apply makeup. What you really want to do is have lighting on either side of the mirror so that it creates even illumination on your face. It's called cross illumination.
What about closets?
Closets is another space. Most of us are getting dressed in the dark these days, and if you try to pick out clothes under incandescent light, standard lighting that we all have, it's so yellow that it shifts the colors dramatically, that you can't tell the difference between navy blue and black, white or off-white, and between a bluish red and an orange red. So you may walk out of the house and later on discover that you have 2 different colored socks on. So what we do is we add fluorescent light in there that gives it the same sort of color as daylight, so you can really do good color matching before you start your day.
Now, interesting you say it's just as important to light your yard as it is to light the interior of your house.
I think it is. What's happening, I think, the trend is that a lot more landscape design is going on. I think people are staying in their homes, reinvesting their equity, and the first place that they work on that is maybe on the landscaping. Once they've done it, I think they really want to enjoy it at night as well, and so that's where lighting comes in to help them see that space at night and enjoy it.
And you say it's also important, though, from the inside of the house, too, because if you don't have lights outside, what you see really are just black mirrors, right?
Exactly. If there's no lighting and you try to look out the window, you end up seeing your own reflection. That's where the black mirror term comes in. If you do have lighting outside, what it does is it visually expands the space, so your interior spaces seem larger. Also, I think you feel a little bit safer because you don't know who's standing out there in the yard. Even if there isn't anybody out there, that you can see outside the windows, people just feel a comfort of safety that they enjoy.
One thing that surprised me about what you had to say was that you're pro fluorescent lights. I was shocked by that. I thought a professional would never touch a fluorescent light.
Oh, my clients, when I start talking about fluorescent, their eyes glaze over. We've had so many bad fluorescent experiences in our lives. The light in our elementary schools and high schools, it would hum and it would flicker, and it was this greenish light that just gave you a really bad skin tone. But what's happened over the 8 years is that lighting in fluorescence, the color has changed so that you have these warm, wonderful colors that are really excellent for skin tones. Plus, they use now what's called an electronic ballast, so there's no humming or buzzing. And now it's also easy to dim fluorescents. Fluorescents are so energy efficient that I think people want to reconsider possibly using fluorescent in their homes. Here in California, we're required that the general illumination in kitchens and baths has to be fluorescent. So we had to get over our fear of fluorescence pretty quickly.
All right. Well, Randall Whitehead, this was a really fun conversation. We had some beautiful pictures of how lighting can make a big difference. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, and thanks again for having me on the show.